Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I'm Katrina Menzigian, and I lead our Analyst Relations Engagement Program here at Everest Group. I'm a vice president with the firm, and I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Jamit Arora, who's a partner at the firm and leads our enterprise transformation work, as well as Abhishek Sharma, also a partner, who leads all things pricing and performance related for us here at Everest Group. So thank you for joining us. We always like to know where people are joining from. That's the cool thing about this platform. So if you can share where you're connecting with us from today, whether you're at home or on the road, that would be awesome because it's great to see how far and wide we're connecting with people. So totally appreciate that. I'm actually in the Boston area. And Jamit, where are you today?
Uh, Joining in from Dallas, Texas.
Okay, so you're close to home. How about you, Abhishek?
I'm joining in from Gurgaon on the outskirts of Delhi in India.
Okay, great, great. We've got folks coming in from Dallas. We've got San Antonio on there. Good. We'll keep adding that in as we go forward and as you join us. Much appreciated. So another thing I was curious about, we're always interested in learning from our audience and the people we touch. Are you using a lot of LinkedIn Live events? Do you enjoy it? What do you enjoy about it? Have you done many of them before? So if you get a chance to comment on that, that would be really helpful because we're always planning on what are the best ways to connect with folks. Look at this, we've got somebody in a restaurant in Mumbai. I hope your meal is good. Thank you for making us part of it. While folks are sort of getting on and getting settled, let me offer you some context. We are often engaged in talking to analyst relations professionals in the marketplace. And a question that I often get, and I think my colleagues on the line often are talking about is, what's the kind of work that Everest Group does with an enterprise organization? How much of what you do involves enterprise stakeholders versus providers, whether it's technology or services, and what does that translate into, or how does that affect what you do with enterprises? And what I wanted to show my my network of AR people and those of you out there who are busy with this kind of work is Everest Group is involved in a very strategic way with enterprises. So first of all, you can see across the bottom of the page here, we are working with Fortune 500 companies on a daily basis. And these are some of the largest companies in their respective fields, whether it's financial services or healthcare or technology players. We are working with small but also very large enterprises and getting to know them in very strategic and deep sorts of ways. One of the things that we are often working on is building deeper understanding of the enterprise stakeholders based on their work, based on where they sit in the organization, based on their role in the organization. So that's where you will see these different kinds of roles being a focus of our effort and our work, so that we understand them deeply and we can communicate with them at what's important for them. So, if I were to look at across any of the enterprises we work with, we're really interested in what the technology leadership is involved with. We're spending time talking to the global business services and shared services leaders. That's a very deep and strong point for Everest Group, given our legacy. Have been and continue to do more and more work with customer experience leadership. Certainly the folks that sit in the procurement and supply chain organization, sourcing and vendor management leaders. We have offerings and projects and programs targeting those folks. And then we have the ever evolving, ever dynamic world of talent and people management, right? Every year there's another element of talent management that comes to the forefront as being important and relevant to how we run our companies. And so wanted to set this out as another area of focus for us as a firm. Now, I wanted to open it up to Jamit and Abhishek to share a little bit more about their own personal interactions in the work that they do, how they engage with these leaders and give you some more color on understanding how Everest Group plays in these spaces. So, Abhishek, let me start with you. I know you spend a lot of time with this audience.
Sure. Thanks, Katrina. And across all these, all the leaders and the stakeholder sets that we spoke about, let me just cover a few, and I'm sure Jimith may have some more examples on the same stakeholder set. It's just the different dimensions where we work and collaborate with them. So within technology leadership, right? And here we're talking about, of course, CIOs, CTOs, but also maybe one level down, VPs, heads of kind of departments. Now, if we were to look at it broadly, where I get mostly engaged is either on helping them with their sourcing decisions for technology, right? Sourcing and commercial implications of the decisions that they take, or also on the operating model, right? Are they choosing, what's the mix of vendors versus insourced? What's kind of what does good look like from an overall performance management perspective? What are some of the commercial norms, etc.? That's where a lot of what we do comes into play. For example, just recently we're engaged very closely with the head of digital workplace services for a financial services company, and we're actually helping them, just make sense out of their fragmented, delivery model and helping them build a business case and future roadmap on how to consolidate it, which of course includes a lot around price, performance, commercial acumen, etc. If you look at CX leaders, right? Again, in one sense, it's similar to technology leaders. They're looking at the customer experience function within it. Generally, these would be, people within large organizations tasked with improving the overall customer experience, right? Be it contact centers, chat, whatever. A few months back, we were working closely with the leadership of a large technology company, customer service leadership of a large technology company, effectively helping them get the best out of three things. One, what's there, and they had a huge portfolio of suppliers that they worked with, and we were working with them on three things. One, what's the best pricing model for their entire portfolio, and depending on the kind of work, what would be the commercial terms that they needed to tweak to be in line with what's there today, and then finally, are they really paying the right price? So that's kind of not just core pricing, but pricing was one of the three elements which helped them get a better hold over their portfolio. And then finally, the third element which I want to talk about is the sourcing and vendor management leaders. Effectively, these would be procurement leads, vendor management leads, or category specialists, right? Who specialize in a few categories. In this case, this could be people who look at the professional services category, IT services category, business services category, and these definitions can sometimes be loose within enterprises depending on who we're talking to. Just taking an example, we've recently worked with the IT category leader of a consumer goods organization, helping them with a very quick turnaround mandate, which was around a sole source proposal review, right? So they were kind of working with a tier one service provider, and they said, "Hey, we've got this proposal. We like these people. We want to work, with this supplier. But how do we make sure that we're getting the best deal?" So within a short turnaround time of 3 to 4 weeks, we did a number of iterations of the proposals that were shared. They took our feedback, reworked it, we checked it again, and this has two benefits. One, to the client, it gives the level of assurance that they're paying the right amount, and B, also I think from the supplier side, foster board approvals, because the board who needs to sign on the deal to go through or the contract to go through, wants to be sure that they're getting that they get the right value. So it actually works out pretty well. Jimit, any other examples come to mind?
I mean, lots of examples come to mind, but maybe I'll kind of touch upon two of the other stakeholder groups that we seem to be doing a lot of work with. One is, of course, on the global business services, shared services side, right, where we're working both with folks who are running the whole GBS, Global Business Services Network, but then also working with some of the individual centers, what's called the GIC, the Global In-House Center, the Global capability GCC center community. So we're doing a lot of work with them. Again, just to kind of borrow from your themes in terms of what are the kinds of recent engagements we've been involved in. Just earlier this week was with a global consumer packaged goods company, helping them think through what's the optimal sourcing strategy and shoring strategy for a variety of work that's within their estate, across finance, supply chain, procurement, digital, automation, etc. And what they really wanted to do was, hey, let's think about the ideal landing zone. Is the work most suitable for us to do through an internal GIC GCC, or should we be working with a third party? And then what's the optimal shore, right? So should it be done from a proximate onshore geography, lower cost near shore, or should we be doing this in an offshore far shore lens? So that's one example of how we've been working with the GBS community. Obviously, we'll talk through some other examples shortly. The final stakeholder group that I did want to call out is all of the work we've been doing with people in workforce strategy and talent organizations. And obviously, we've been helping them across these years with location decisions as they think about their global talent supply chains. But some of you may have seen we've been also publishing on who are some of the top employers of tech talent, who are the top employers for GBS talent. In fact, one of our, just later this month, we're going to be providing an update to some of that. So helping people really understand where their gaps are as with respect to where the talent market sees them, and then what are some interventions they can design to be really creating the right value proposition for their employees. So I think we spoke about the work we do with tech, the work we do with CX leaders, so the CIO stack, the CX leader stack, the chief procurement, sourcing, vendor management, GBS shared services, and then talent and workforce leaders. Katrina, did that somehow answer and give a wide lens of the different areas?
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I wanted to ask you guys to clarify is how much of the time are we helping them work through decisions related to their investments in services kinds of scenarios versus any experience you have helping them work through technology related scenarios where they're out there trying to make a technology investment decision or optimizing the technology that they've invested in? Like, how does that play into the conversation?
So I can go first, and then Abhishek, please chime in. So I think one of the things that's happened over time is, I want to say, I've been in Everest now for 18 years. There was a very clear distinction between what was services and what was tech, right? Mm-hmm. If I think about now, as we move to an as a service economy, the distinction between where the services line stop and the tech or software line begins is blurry. We have this whole thing called SaaS, which has been around forever, software as a service, right? So have we been doing SaaS decisions for a long period of time? Absolutely. Are we doing a lot of cloud decisions? Absolutely. If I were to kind of put a number, because we don't like giving it depends, at least I don't like giving it depends kind of answers, I'd say about it's a 70-30 distribution right now. If you think about helping people with their services decisions versus technology decisions, maybe 70% is still what you'd consider closer to services, 30% closer to technology. But then I'd say that there is this big hybrid that's emerged where it's really hard to say where each of those boundaries change. But Abhishek, I know you're helping clients with SAP licensing support, Salesforce licensing support. So we're doing pure play software work as well. So why don't you comment on that?
Absolutely. And the point you made around the whole continuum between what's services versus software, I think is spot on. But from a pricing perspective, I think we have a bit of a cleaner cutoff, right, on some of the things. So if we were to look at the work we do from a price optimization, spend optimization perspective on software, which is basically licenses for ERP, other platforms. Currently, that's somewhere around kind of 10 to 15%, right, of what we do, whereas the other 85% would be kind of services or services plus plus, as Jimit mentioned. So that's another lens of looking at the kind of split of work that we're doing. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad you brought that up, Jimit. I didn't want to sort of limit the conversation to traditional models, and you were right to bring up the continuum, which also sort of lends to the whole point of oftentimes your stakeholders will vary because, is the buyer stakeholder a technology person or let's say a CX person? Because now you're seeing both stakeholders involved with technology decisions, or the CX person making the technology decision, whereas perhaps in the past it would have been somebody in the technology office. So it's interesting to see that evolution. So once we've outlined here our stakeholders that we're working with, wanted to move over to, you can see here we have the same stakeholders we've been talking about, but what are the kinds of challenges that they face? And, which of those challenges is Everest Group particularly focused on helping organizations work through? And so, in the case of technology, you may have already gotten a sense, but we're talking about strategic technology investments, right? The investments that they're making and the direction that they're going to optimize their digital transformation journey. What options do they have? How do they think about the options that they have? A lot of what we do at Everest Group is help people think through that which they're trying to accomplish, so that they have a vision of where they are today and where they want to go. And how do we get you there, right? It's not just, do I buy A or B? It's like, what will those choices involve? What are the repercussions of those choices? Similar kind of dynamic with customer experience, right? We're moving towards a space, we have been moving and continue to move towards a space where we're digitizing all of customer interaction, but what's the right combination of that? How does that affect processes? What do you need in order to be able to move successfully in that direction beyond the technology? Or conversely, once you have the technology, what are you able to do now that you weren't able to do before? In the space of sourcing and vendor management, you have these engagements, and the way to think about optimizing that engagement and managing those vendors has evolved significantly. It went from purely being maybe an evaluation of, where does the value come from in the optimization, and it went over time from being a price-centric model to looking at more of, what is the total cost of ownership? What is the total cost of impact? What is the strategic management of that portfolio? And so, I know, Abhishek, your team spends a lot of time on that. Same thing with GBS, right? Again, it went from, how do we optimize just the tactical parts of the delivery to, once we've optimized delivery, how do we then leverage that for the gains of the business model overall, right? How do we think about that, and how do our choices of location and talent and things like that matter? And that takes us into the fifth spot here, which is the talent and workforce area. How do you access the right people with the right skills and optimize your workforce, especially as we've become a global workforce, with the walls of location having been broken down, but at the same time, against the context of a quickly changing requirement of skills, a skills changing profile. And so with that context, I wanted to throw it open to Jimit and Abhishek to kind of take us maybe through a little bit more detail on some of these memberships that we have. And by membership, I mean, these are sort of ongoing engagement models where a client will invest to be supported over a period of time with information and guidance. And they try to, the portfolio that we've built out addresses the things I was just referring to. So Jimit, maybe you can go first this time.
Yeah, no, so I think it's a good summary of the kinds of challenges we are helping. And again, this is a subset, couldn't get through all of them. We just hit upon some of the main ones. As a research firm, of course, we are membership first. And one of the advantages, some of the examples that we shared earlier were more bespoke projects of decision support we are helping our clients with. But most of our clients, we call them members, most of our members are starting with a membership arrangement, right? And what's interesting is that when it comes to some of our memberships, they are very stakeholder focused. So if you think about the technology stack, we have an overall technology excellence program. You will see an excellence theme running across here, right? That's the branding that we've taken for our enterprise-centric memberships. So you've got technology excellence, you've got talent excellence, and then there's two that you will see are again, you're going to see them repeat across the stack, which is pricing analytics as a service. And Abhishek can talk more through that. And then Talent Genius, right? We think of these as, we grew up in the world of services. Services at the end of the day is all about constructing, configuring your talent supply chains. And we've been helping all of our stakeholders with their decisions across their talent supply chains, both internal and external. So when it comes to that internal talent base, be it tech, CX, GBS, SPM, doesn't really matter, right? We've created and really proud of this new online AI platform helping people with analytics around data. So that's Talent Genius. And then the other thing which people have known us for a while, the last 15 years, I guess, Abhishek, is helping people with pricing decisions related to their third party and outsourcing estates. And one of the models, and I think it's helpful to comment on this for a second, is traditionally the industry said, hey, let's do a benchmark, right? We have a deal coming up for renewal, let's do benchmarking. And we said, well, yes, but as a client, you're going to have an ongoing need to do this. So let's not make this episodic. And we constructed that into a membership where it's almost an on-demand benchmarking service for our clients. So Talent Genius, pricing analytics, and then IT excellence, talent excellence is what we're really taking to our IT stakeholders. On the CX side, we have a program for CX excellence, right? Again, helping people with how do you really construct the best customer experience for your consumers. On the sourcing side, outsourcing excellence is our flagship product for market insights. Pricing analytics obviously is something which our sourcing and vendor management people use a lot. Similarly for GBS, there's a core GBS program. And then on the talent and workforce side, obviously Talent Genius is one of our flagship offerings, right? But again, the themes that you're seeing here is, I'd say three broad themes. One is helping the stakeholders succeed in their function is our core excellence program. So it could be technology excellence, GBS excellence, outsourcing excellence. Talent Genius is the analytics around the supply chain for internal talent. And then pricing analytics as a service is our on-demand benchmarking, price and performance analytics program. Abhishek, anything you wanted to add or clarify on that?
No, absolutely. Jivit, I'll maybe just add a little bit more color on the pricing analytics as a service. Because, and why I want to press on that is also because this traditionally, as you mentioned, has been like a one-time service, right? You have a benchmark, needs to be done, custom engagement, hand over the report and go. What we realize is that large portfolios, and if you look at the sourcing and vendor management group, just as an example, may have requirements for pricing intelligence across the year. It's not just at milestones or when they need to get a renewal done. It's just the portfolio, especially on the application side, for example, it's just so dynamic. It's constantly shape-shifting. It often runs into millions and millions of dollars. A $2 or $3 per hour rate difference here and there from normal or from what would be considered competitive could have a major impact, and it's so difficult to get it back in shape once it's been signed. So overall, I think both enterprise clients and us, we've decided that it's best to stay engaged. Plus, there's also tons of pricing related work which is not really pricing, right? And I'll explain what that means. There's just so many impactors of total spend of large enterprises, which is more than just rate cards, right? It's contractual terms and conditions. It's transformation charges. It's how much productivity, efficiency is being baked in. I mean, you may find it surprising, the group may find it surprising that a lot of the work that we're doing with our clients is actually getting their rate cards into shape, not the pricing, but also the structure of the rate cards. Yep. Because the way portfolios have grown, each business has its own definition of a developer versus senior developer, and they're paying different rates for the same resources, right? Depending on who they're contracting with. Okay, so that's kind of the whole element, or the whole genesis, and perhaps the reason why we structured these offerings, so that we can have a very kind of contextualized ongoing service, so to speak.
Mm. So one of the things that came to my mind as you were both explaining your experiences is that so much of what is in what we do with the enterprise market is around reflective of the fact that this market has matured, and the operation of working with outside providers, whether it's services or technology, folks have become very well experienced in how to do that, and you have these strong professionals inside the organization. So that has driven us to look at offerings that allow them to take their knowledge and optimize it to the next level, right? So in some cases, as we'll see soon in our conversation, we go deep with them on a very custom bespoke sort of way. But in other cases, they just want a thought partner who can intelligently support them on an ongoing basis. And I think that's sort of the approach we've taken. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and Katrina, you mentioned a very important point. Over years, as I interact with a lot of these clients, it's not uncommon to find a lot of my ex-colleagues or ex-contacts from the broader sourcing advisory field, where I've worked over the past 20 years, yeah, to find them in some position. And that's how, organizations have built up their skill pool and talent. So what they want generally is not hand-holding to do everything. They want very focused, point-based insights to help them make decisions, which is not the model, hey, swoop in with a gang of 10 people, spend a month with them and go away. That model could be, hey, I need like a 4-hour conversation, just helping me think through, my strategic planning for the year. That's
Yeah.
the ask, right? And then a week down the line, it's, hey, we've got these rates. I'm not sure they're right. Can you do a check? That's the kind of pointed insight which people are looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. So, because I often get asked, hey, I hear you guys are consulting on a deal because we're hearing from our client. And I'm like, well, there are cases where we're doing kind of close work with a client, but oftentimes it's your client is looking at our information, and it's that we've worked with on for them, or we've delivered to them as part of their membership. And that's shaped their thinking. And that's what you're seeing reflected in the questions they're asking you and the conversations they're having with you.
And I think Katrina, on that, I know you had some use cases where we are helping people with specific point support in different areas, right? So I'd say that there's a structural difference in terms of how we engage with our members and how you might think of a consulting clients. I think of consulting clients as being episodic, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're helping with initiative support. We tend to think of it as, hey, we are helping you on the journey, right? So we are with you on the journey in some ways. And so pretty much every interaction we are having with our client is to give them advice on specific decisions they are taking, right? A majority of them are related to some transaction that they are working on. It could be, hey, they're selecting a supplier, they're renegotiating rates, they're rationalizing their portfolio, selecting a location. So absolutely, we are consulting, we are advising them, but we are doing them in a manner which is within a membership for the most part. And it's an ongoing support vehicle versus specific starts and stops along the way.
Right. And do you find that, certain particular stakeholders in these organizations are more likely to engage with the membership than others? Is it the senior stakeholder in that office, or is it maybe their support team? Like, if you were to think about sort of the actual decision points, where do those lie?
So I'd say that it's usually a mix of the two, and I like to think of it as, in any organization you're going to have a lot of power users, right? And then you also have the executive leadership. I also saw a question about influence in digital transformation investments, which we should get to in a minute. But I would say that in any client, we've got both personas pretty consistently that there's obviously more power users than executives. So the nature of interaction skews more towards, hey, on the day-to-day, you are engaging more with the power users, but then we also have a check-in, I'd say, with the executives probably once a month, where we are packing and understanding what their issues are, and then making sure that once we reconnect in a few weeks, in a month's time, we're giving them the answers that they need. So it's equal, but there's more power users in any organizations than executives. So you start to see some of that play out.
Sure. All right. So, Abhishek, unless you have any other comments to add to this, I was going to move on to our next point in the conversation.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
Okay, great. Can we get the next slide? Put up on the screen. Awesome. So let's think about it. We built the conversation today a little bit like a funnel, right? So we talked about sort of who are the stakeholders at a broad level and what are the issues that they're dealing with. Then we kind of focus down a little bit more to say, how do we help these stakeholders on an ongoing basis? But Jimit, just a few minutes ago, said something that leads to this part of the conversation, which is when we do bespoke work at a particular point with them on the journey, what does that look like, right? So we think about our influence in two ways, or our work with these clients in two ways. We talked about, well, actually three, right? We talked about the memberships. Here, we're going to talk a little bit about when we go very deep on a particular topic on a custom basis. And that's a very intimate sort of way of working with our stakeholders. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, but at the same time, in the inverse scenario where we look at widespread market education and awareness, this is where we cast the net quite wide. These are typically education-oriented, market awareness, discussion-oriented things that we do that attract a lot of engagement and interaction with enterprise organizations. So we offer a lot of complimentary research and webinars on our sites, and we invite anybody to come and learn and contribute and discuss. We do virtual roundtables, which are, usually meant to be very small venue with very specific stakeholders who are grappling with a specific issue. Sometimes it has to do with a major development in the market. Sometimes it has to do with an event. If an event happens, like the war in Ukraine started, or a merger or an acquisition happens that affects a lot of individual enterprises, we invite the most senior people in that area on our side as analysts, and then as members of enterprises to join and have a conversation, a virtual conversation, but it's a small group and they're meant to be able to share experiences and learn from each other. Again, that is an invite-only basis, but it's also open to anybody, whether they're a client or not. We speak at and attend industry conferences, and so that's another place where we are having conversations with enterprises, and our thought leadership. Our thought leadership documents are either shared by the providers in the marketplace out to their audiences. So that's one way of sharing our viewpoints. Sometimes we post them on our websites, and you can get them from a complimentary standpoint. It depends on the model, but it's thought leadership that we want to get out there into the marketplace. So happy to talk more about that, and I encourage Jimit and Abhishek to do that. But what's probably the least the area we probably least talk about publicly, but we do quite a bit of, are those custom engagements we were talking about. Actually, could we get that slide back up for a second? Thank you. So Abhishek, I know you have a lot of experience with these strategic engagement reviews. I was going to ask you to look at that and the vendor management best practices, maybe price performance, whichever of these you're particularly interested in. And then
Sure.
Jimit, maybe you can share some of yours. But these are all the ways that we have and continue to engage with clients on very strategic decision-making exercises that they're undertaking.
Absolutely. I'll perhaps start with strategic engagement reviews. So this is basically, any enterprise and service provider, having an outsourced contract. Over time, it's highly likely that some objectives start getting diverged, right? Because it's a service, yes, there could be technology involved, but then there's a lot of context behind it. It's not absolutely standardized. Nothing is, like I was talking, even in the largest and most mature organizations, even role definitions are not standardized. Leave aside having a standard view of what a good service looks like. So one option for enterprises or the relationship is to just focus on hearsay. Oh, the users are not happy, they hate the supplier says, well, we're not getting the right support, we contracted for something else. That's one option. The other option is to take a very objective view of where things stand, right? And even if there are gaps, it's important to quantify them rather than just go ahead with rumors and hearsay. And that's where strategic engagement review comes in. This is basically a 360-degree view of the engagement or the contract, right? So it's, of course, it has pricing. It also has a review of what we call the solution. Is the underlying solution fit for purpose? What do the metrics look like? The SLAs, KPIs, operational metrics. Are the contract terms and conditions, in line with to drive the right kind of objectives? And then finally, what's really the transformation at play? And by transformation, we mean things that are actually being incorporated and delivered rather than what's there on paper. So that's something which many enterprises get done on a regular basis for their material contracts, just to get a closer to either half tenure of the contract, or maybe 12 to 18 months before an impending renewal or expiry, to get a very fact-based view on where things are going. The other element, I think, Custom, which I'll talk about, is what we call price and performance benchmarking. Now, that also covers a subset of these elements, but where it's different is that it's often much quicker, right? It's faster. It just focuses on, hey, this is the price as compared with the performance you're getting, right? That's how it looks like vis-a-vis the market, and it's generally used for smaller portfolios, or where the intent is just to do a bit of a course correction or a quick decision, as opposed to like a full-blown engagement review. So again, working with different similar stakeholders, depending on which part of the portfolio it is, the right answer might be very different, depending on the ask. Jimit, over to you.
If you look across the stack, right, provider shortlisting is something that I probably had the first use case on when I joined Everest 18 years ago, right? And that continues to be one of the most common questions. Again, so hey, we are entering a situation, which company, and it could be a service provider, which is our traditional lens. So which tech provider, could be RPA, could be digital areas, could be cybersecurity, could be KYC, industry specific. Life sciences, clinical tech has been an area where we've been involved so much over the last few years. So there's a lot of different flavors of provider shortlisting that we get involved in on a bespoke basis. Similar to providers, again, both tech and services, we also get this question a lot, which is, hey, we're looking to expand, create resilience in our delivery location strategy. Where should we be going, right? And therefore, the location optimization use cases are also very common. Very interestingly, there's two themes, two big trends we are seeing. Trend one is we are already in tier 1 locations in a mature geography like India. What are tier 2, tier 3 options? And then near shore, lots of interest. So those are two more that I wanted to call out as potential areas where we see. And then again, there's different forms of benchmarking, best practice assessment. People want diagnostics of their current estate to create roadmap for future transformation. So we get involved in a number of those bespoke engagements for our members, in some cases non-members also. Katrina, looks like you're about to say something or add a comment.
Well, no, I was going to make the point that it's interesting to what you were talking about earlier. A lot of tech decisions now look like services decisions, right? And how you manage technology now looks more like how services has been managed for so long. And so when we talk about things like provider shortlisting, now we're looking at it of the long-term Do you guys hear me echoing? I wonder what that-
A little bit, yeah.
Let's see.
Let's try now.
All right, thank you. So it's interesting to see how the conversation is leverageable in the theories and the concepts and the skill sets and the knowledge of how do you manage these types of engagements in the marketplace. There's a lot of leverage there and overlap and similarity that Everest Group's historic strength is very relevant and applicable to. Yeah. Okay. Great. So we actually had a question from Alejandro. So I wanted to kind of read it out and highlight it. Is the CFO still the most influential guy or gal in digital transformation investments? Do you believe that this will evolve, and CX should be that person or CTO? How is that working in your experience? Who are you talking to more and more these days?
Great question. Again, I'll try to give I don't like it depends answer, so I'm going to try to be as specific as we can here, right? So if we think about what's happening in the world of digital transformation, we've characterized it along two lenses. Hey, you've got digital for growth, and then you've got digital for efficiency, right? Digital for growth is usually things related to the experience stack. These are things which impact top line. And then digital for efficiency are enablements that you're putting in your technology architecture to be more effective, to streamline operations, and hopefully achieve the same outcomes cheaper, right? So I don't think that digital decisions in some shape and form are driven in isolation. It is usually by committee. That's what we are seeing in most of our clients. The CFO is an important stakeholder, absolutely. But I wouldn't say that the CFO is the only stakeholder or the most influential person in these investments. I will say that what does happen in a recessionary environment, such as or quasi-recessionary environment that we find ourselves in right now, spending is under a lot more scrutiny. Because spending is under a lot more scrutiny, you have to ensure that the business case is sound, right? And it could be both sides. Say if you're really seeking investments to drive growth, let's make sure that that growth is coming in, and therefore the CX leader, the CTO gets involved for sure. But the articulation of the business case is important, more so in this environment versus not. Final comment I'll make on this is one of the other themes we're seeing across our client base is that the funding mechanism for these types of investments are becoming more VC-like. So they're stage gates. So you can't just say, hey, I've got a massive digital transformation program for which we need $5 million. So here's your check, go run with it. CFOs are being demanding and saying, okay, here's the first tranche. Show me the results for the first tranche or show me the progress or the milestones that are being met. And we'll release the second tranche, third tranche, and so on. So is the CFO a very influential stakeholder in this? Absolutely. But should they be the only one? No, we are not seeing that. In most of these, we are seeing it's done by committee. And then the CX leader, the CTO, the CIO, in some cases, even the CEOs are very much involved in these investment processes.
Abhishek, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Katrina, I'll just build on one of the points which Amit mentioned. Again, I'll use the term "it depends," but the pivot here is the environment you're in. Generally, what we saw was that in kind of 2021, or at least later part of 2021, 2022, when digital transformation investments were at their peak. Yes, the CFO was extremely important because he or she needs to sign in, but sign off on the investment. But then again, the concept of business cases and the optimism with which organizations, that momentum with which things used to get done. I guess getting those approvals or getting it done was simpler. Right now, that toll gate, for obvious reasons, has become much stricter, right? Just because if that, so the relative importance, or if I were to say, the chances of the investment getting stuck or questioned there is obviously materially higher today than about 12 to 15 months back. So there's a timeline and environment view as well.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, it's interesting to think that it's not clear that that shift will any kind of shift will happen in anytime soon right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do have a question for our panel, but I wanted to remind folks to, if you have questions, we do have time to answer some of those. And I encourage you to put those into the comments and the chat window, and we'll definitely try to tackle them. But one of the our audience today are analyst relations professionals. Our goal was to help them feel more confident in understanding how Everest Group engages with their organization's clients, right? This is all about that enterprise client out there who are, in many cases, mutual clients. So in your experience, when you're working on these kind of maybe bespoke or membership opportunities, how often or in what ways are you encountering analyst relations professionals, and how do they help shape these engagements, help bring the right people to the table? What role can analyst relations, or do analyst relations people play in helping their organizations, their stakeholders in this dynamic?
Yeah, so I think, and this is where it gets really interesting. And I'd say that for some of the work that we do, let's take an example of provider shortlisting, right? Oftentimes the clients want to remain anonymous because they might be in early stages. They want to make sure that they're not signaling their intent sooner than they would want to. They're running a very confidential process. So they're using us to get external market validation, and then B, maintain that anonymity in some shape and form. At the same time, some of the questions they're asking are fairly detailed, and things which might require us to go back and do some additional primary research, primary investigations, peek to the references, etc. And I think one of the key roles that we see the analyst relations teams play for us is to help us in these project situations outside of what I'd consider a normal peak matrix transaction or peak matrix RFI, and then get us access to either their stakeholders, their customers, or even some more information and data assets, which would allow us to more completely represent the company's capabilities to our clients, right? So I'd say that oftentimes you've got that fact base potentially coming in from something like the peak matrix RFIs, but then the ability to tap into that competency and network for bespoke work is something that I think is really valuable for us. And we wanted to kind of, at least, I know I've tapped into this community a lot. And then sometimes it might seem unreasonable where we say, hey, I need this information, and you speak to one of your executives in a week. They'll be like, why? And then it's like, hey, we got a client deadline to meet. And that's where I think it also kind of goes back to your comment earlier about, hey, are you doing consulting? Are you doing point support? Are you just members? So I know that creates some confusion, but I do know that the analyst relations community helps us a lot in those fast burn situations.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with, does the AR see itself as an enabler? Does the AR team see itself as sort of the watchtower guard who is trying to moderate interaction? But hopefully after today's conversation, more folks will feel that there's opportunity to collaborate and to move everybody forward in some of these conversations. Abhishek, what's your experience been?
Yeah, Katrina, it's interesting because from a pricing side, we have to maintain a bit more of what we may call the Chinese walls, and it has to be very controlled, right? But having said that, there have been times when let's say when we're working with an enterprise on a strategic engagement review, or a benchmark, or anything, and the enterprise wants to get the respective supplier involved, right? Either from a review perspective, or get their views, or input into the process, because we have to stick with how the client wants to run things, right? In some cases, I think that the AR community has been helpful in wherever, for a number of reasons, if they got involved somehow, right, as part of, once they got to know that we were helping with a particular client. I think, again, like Jim had mentioned, getting access to the right kind of people, making sure that we have the questions answered or any clarifications met. I think that's been very helpful, as we trudge through those situations or engagements, because a lot of, at least the way we approach our pricing work with enterprises, is not to pit one against the other. It's not to, hey, we'll get you the cheapest price, will come what may. It's to help both parties get a fair deal, because that's how value gets created, right? I can speak for 3 hours on about clients not getting innovation, but then you look at their pricing and say, at this price, you're asking for innovation and transformation. So it has to kind of stick in. So I think that's where the and getting access to the right kind of people has been very helpful wherever, in cases, the AR community has been involved.
Yeah, because your point highlights something for me, which is there have been cases in my experience and in my history as an analyst where the provider has actually asked us to start talking to their client, right? To start talking to their enterprise, because
Absolutely.
they want their client to feel confident. This has been my experience, and I'm throwing it out to see what you guys think. They want the client to feel confident that they're knowledgeable enough so that they're making the best choices for themselves, and they're not being sort of pressured into any particular direction. And then also it shows a little bit of confidence on the part of the provider, right? To say, here, I'm comfortable enough with what I'm presenting to you, have an outside impartial, and we engage with that enterprise client, not the provider in that scenario. So
Yeah.
I think I've experienced what you're saying.
Absolutely, and this happens many times when again, like you said, the provider has the right kind of confidence that, hey, we're confident that we're not way off the mark, right? And let's get an objective view as well. So they're happy to introduce us, and then obviously, the commercial or engagement is with the client. But yeah, the introduction many times happens through the community.
Okay, very good. Well, I think we're getting close to wrapping up. I wanted to, any last comments from either you, Jamid, or Abhishek, before we wish everybody a good evening or a good day?
No, I think nothing additional from my side, and hopefully we've given some ideas in terms of what it is that we help our clients with. I think it's the important thing is it's not a one and done. And for me, it's like I wish I could characterize what a day in the life of looks like on the enterprise side of the house, but it can be so dynamic, right? There's so many stakeholders, so many issues that at any point in time, our teams are helping with pretty much all of the decisions that we put down on those couple of slides you had. So yeah, if people have more questions, happy to try to share as much as we can, respecting the confidentiality provisions, of course.
Yeah. Abhishek, any thoughts? Parting thoughts?
No, I think I'll just echo what Jimit said. Hopefully, this provided some a broader overview of the kind of problem statements we're solving, the kind of stakeholders we're engaging with, and yeah, if there's any further questions, happy to connect either now, or this is being done via LinkedIn. So feel free to connect. We're always happy to have a chat.
Yeah, so that's a great segue. So to wrap up, a couple of things. One, again, if you're an AR person and would like to know more, would like to delve into more any of these topics more deeply, feel free to reach out to me, to Abhishek, or to Jamit. You can find us all on LinkedIn if you're not already connected with us. Another thing is that you will all receive the most recent copy of our Analyst Relations newsletter, and you'll have the option to click on a link. There's one in the chat. but as well as in the newsletter. And you can receive our quarterly updates that we send out to help AR people in what they do and help them understand Everest Group. And then as Abhishek was mentioning, so this session will also be available as soon as we log off today, and you'll be able to share that with any colleagues or clients that you think would benefit from the conversation. And so hopefully you're walking away feeling a little bit more empowered and confident about what we're about and how it fits into what you do on a daily basis, because that's the goal. All right, everyone. Thank you. Have a good day, a good evening, and hopefully be in touch. Take care. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Abhishek, for your participation.